This is where I live, 3rd Street in Courtenay, and pretty ordinary house, ordinary street in a pretty special little town. And I really show this just to acknowledge that I come from a position of privilege, relative privilege, and I consider myself incredibly fortunate. Not all of our citizens live in such places. This is where some of the people in our community live. And that looks pretty orderly. That's not actually an outhouse at the back. There's no running water here. There's no toilet. There's no electricity. There's no garbage pickup. But, you know, it kind of looks okay. But the problem is, where you get one, you soon get many. Because, of course, people like to live in community. And if there's a space that's available, it'll fill up. And that site is actually the city land that we had set aside to work with BC Housing to create a supportive housing project. Of course, that's what happens after there's been a campsite. Those pictures are from behind the Walmart site. It's really a mess. And of course, among the shopping carts and other debris, there's needles, condoms, you name it. What you don't see is the fish-bearing stream and the park that's in the back. And of course, you can imagine the concern for our stream keepers with that. This is a site behind Thrifty's, and it was a campsite for a while until we fast-tracked the construction project that was going to go on there, and of course the contractor put the fence up. But the concerns that came up here, there's a hospice office nearby, and the clients were really concerned about the aggressive panhandling that was going on. The residents were concerned about the drug use. This is the current active campsite there's lots more to it back in the woods, and this is behind the regional district pump site on city land. And this is our shelter. It's okay, it's in a residential neighborhood. It's well used, but a lot of people who are homeless don't want to stay there. Some because they don't like being in crowds, others because they don't like rules. These are three-quarters of our bike patrol, and of course they're busy visiting the sites, but also visiting the sites are volunteers from our caravan who provide basic medical care, and they go around to all the homeless sites and the parts of the community where they can minister. This is Kevin, our new bylaw officer, lovely man. And he's explaining to this young woman who was camping by the river that it's really not a good idea because the elderly woman who lives in the house just near there welcomed the people who were camping there in the fall till the campsite grew to a point that she actually felt terrorized. So that young woman was really cooperative. I actually gave her a ride down to somewhere she could stay. These are a couple of our civic facilities, our library and our rec center. And those become unofficial drop-in centers. And of course, our staff then are dealing with all the issues of the street. But we're going to put in a city drop-in center soon, and that's going to solve that. I put these slides in because on the site of our fire hall, there used to be a bunch of cabins there that were low rent. And that other site is a vacant lot, which used to have a single-room occupancy hotel on it. As those places disappear, that adds to the loss of housing. We don't have the problems that some places have had where there's been a massive tent city grow, and of course that's Nanaimo that you'll have heard about. And you'll all have heard about Anita Place. I actually had one of our outreach workers say to me, why don't you guys develop a managed campsite like they have in Maple Ridge? Well, why don't we? I mean, I don't know of a municipality in Canada that's gone that route, but I mean, it doesn't look too bad right now. And of course, people probably know the history. There was an injunction there and a settlement was reached that would allow the people to stay until housing was built. But here's the greatest fear that municipalities have if you allow campsites to proliferate. This is what happens. And try explaining that to the people in the neighborhood. Now, the issue of a managed campsite, I think, should be up for debate because there actually are examples of them across the country. And here's one in Portland, Dignity Village. More a collection of tiny homes, but it grew out of a tent city back about 17 years ago. And it looks pretty good. There's another slide of it here that, you'll see that it looks like a little village. The people run it themselves, and they take in people, but of course they have rules. They have a no drug, no alcohol rule. And even with that, there's several thousand people still on the streets of Portland. So it doesn't solve the entire problem, not by a long shot. Of course, this is the answer. This is the Braidwood Center, which is Indigenous housing. It just opened officially last week. We had a political fight that lasted just about the length of my 9 years in office to get that place built. But 33 people are moving into it right now. And remember that site where the campers were and the place that we donated? That was it, because our outreach staff actually convinced the people to move. We're one of the few communities in the province that got this project off the ground without an injunction. And there it is a week later. So that's a game changer. And I always believed that if we could get a couple of wins, that we would get more, and more housing would come. But of course, what I knew was that it would take having a partner at the provincial government that was prepared to invest in housing and take bold action like that. We need so much more of it, but we also are not going to solve the entire problem. So we need to have a conversation about how we manage campsites. They're not going to go away, folks. So I just hope I've given you something to think about tonight. And I want to just say thank you so much to our provincial partners.